Sacramento Public Library, we believe that our service is to provide the community with that universe of possibilities. And that includes events like tonight. And we're so honored that Jessamyn Stanley is here on her book tour because she embodies that whole universe of possibilities. So thank you.
Thank you.
No, it's amazing. And, she's one of those people that demonstrates that you have to do what you don't always think you can do, right? I mean, is that to me is part of what this is all about. She didn't give up on yoga. She found her way, and now she is an inspiration and a light for everybody else who needs to find that same way. Thank you so much for coming out to the library tonight and enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think the first thing, Jessamyn, is how you got here. I love your story about Bikram yoga, and that kind of sounds like a hot-ass mess, too.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of hot-ass mess. When she
Tell
said
us how you discovered yoga.
Well, I'm just going to do this, actually. Okay, cool. So I started practicing yoga when I was in graduate school, and I was going through a pretty severe period of depression. One of my classmates was like, oh my God, try Bikram yoga, you're gonna love it, it's gonna change your life. Because Bikram tends to get like kind of a culty following, and I say that in the most positive way, like no shade on cults, but it's definitely like a, you drank the Kool-Aid type situation, right? Yeah. So she's like, oh my God, you'll love it, it's gonna change your life. And I was like, I'm not doing that, because I had actually tried yoga once when I was in high school, and tried Bikram yoga specifically. My aunt was really into it. My aunt has the kind of personality where gets obsessed with things and is obsessed with them for a short period of time. That same summer, I think it was the summer she was obsessed with making cheesecakes. So like we're eating a lot of cheesecakes and she's also talking a lot about Bikram yoga. But so she was like, oh my God, try Bikram yoga, you'll love it. And I was like, I mean, I'm fat, I'm 16, I got nothing better to do. Why not go to this hot yoga class? And I remember walking in. It was exactly like walking into a hot, damp washcloth and just like having it trapped across your face. And it smells very intense in there,
like
because,
feet.
Yes, it is a very strong foot aroma because the sweat seeps into the carpeting. And it is a very just overwhelming experience initially because the heat is so intense. I don't know how many of you guys have tried Bikram yoga specifically. It's a style of hot yoga. The room is heated to about 104 degrees, and you practice 26 yoga asana postures over a 90-minute period 2 times. This is an ass-kicking class for even people who've been practicing it for decades will get knocked out by it. But I walked into the class, and even just standing there was a lot. Like, before we did any physical movement, I was sweating so much. Like, I was sweating in my eyebrows, in my elbow creases, the backs of my knees. And this is before we have even done any physical activity. So I was just thinking, like, how am I gonna survive 90 minutes of this? And we did the opening rounds of pranayama, which pranayama is breathing, it's breath work, essentially, and it's arguably the most important part of yoga, I think. But, and you come out of the womb breathing. This is like the first thing that you learn how to do, and this breathing is not just your regular breathing. And so, and especially like in the Bikram class environment, I know you've experienced this, where everyone is like kind of trying to show off for one another. So like everyone's doing this like really intense dragon breathing, and I was just like, what is happening? And then, I mean, I feel like I'm being too generous to say that I made it a third of the way through the class before I left, but I was like, yeah, this. I'm done. I don't need to know any more about yoga. I'm good. And I walked out. They tell you not to leave the room, but I was like, these people do not know me. I have to get out of here. And I walked out, immediately felt amazing because there's AC. Everything's great. I feel like, and then I was like, oh yeah, I could go back in. And I walked back into the room. I learned why they tell you not to do that, because the heat is so intense and the temperature outside is so intense and the conflict in your body creates nausea. And so I got really, really sick, and I left the room entirely, and I was like, I'm not doing this. So this was 7 years later when my friend was like, oh my God, try Bikram yoga. And I was like, no. And so, but she wore me down. They had a Groupon pass to the studio. I was like, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You spend $30, you go once, who cares? And so I went, and I loved it. Nothing had changed. It was still so hard. It was still insanely hot. I couldn't do, all of the postures seemed to be impossible. I was always the fattest person in the room, always trying to hide myself in the corner. But I didn't realize it. In my day-to-day life, I wasn't trying. I wasn't like stepping outside of any boundaries. I wasn't leaping hurdles. I wasn't like, learning anything about myself. I would just wake up, go to class, go to work, have the same conversations over and over again, go to sleep, wake up, do the same thing again. I was not engaged at all. And the reality of a yoga practice is that regardless of how you walk into it, if you're going to practice any asana, even just sitting, you have to be aware, you have to be present, and you have to be just showing up for the moment. And especially when the poses get intense. And it's this thing where I would start to practice the poses and I would immediately just think like, I can't do it. Why did I even think I could do it? I'm not good enough to do this. Who here has been in a yoga class and thought some of these things? Like, I'm not, yeah, right? So you just start, it's really just like talking shit about yourself. Like, I can't do this. And in Bikram yoga, there are mirrors that face you, right? So like, you're supposed to be looking into the eyes of your one true teacher, looking into your own eyes. And I was just looking at my arms, looking at my belly, thinking like, why did you even think you could show up to do this? You obviously are too fat. That's why you can't do these poses. And I would just get into this place of being so negative with myself. And to the other people in the room, it probably just looked like I was pissed. Like I'm mad at the teacher, I'm mad at the class, but I was really just mad at myself. And to go from that, and it's like you're whining and crying and then saying, yeah, but you could just try. Like you're sitting here and you're whining and you're complaining, but you could also just try. Maybe you're gonna fall down. You're probably gonna fall down. You're probably not gonna be able to do it like everybody else, but you could just try. And that trying, I was not doing that. That was not a thing. And so it just completely flipped the script on how I was thinking about life and how it changed so much for me. And it's also not the kind of thing where it's like, oh my God, I went to one yoga class and I just felt so amazing and then I just kept going back and then everything was so great and now, these years later, I just feel so amazing. It was not like that. It was like, yeah, I'm doing this thing, it feels good. It feels really good, in fact. I feel more awake and alive because when you start seeing that you're not trying on the yoga mat, where else in life are you not trying? What other instances on a day-to-day basis are you not stepping outside of or trying to fall down, trying to leap, trying to see something more? And it gave me the confidence to leave graduate school, which was making me really, really miserable. And I moved to Durham, where I live now. And when I moved to Durham, I couldn't afford to practice in the studios. The only way that I could afford to do it at the time is because I had a work study to the studio. But we don't really talk about this that much in the Western yoga world, but practicing yoga is extremely financially prohibitive to most people. And when you're talking about even if $15 is gonna be on the cheap end, and you're supposed to be doing this multiple times a week, give me a break. That's not a thing. So
my trick here in Sacramento is most studios have a $30 for the first month.
So you just flip around different studios?
I've just tried every studio, and then I use my work email.
That's the equivalent of going to different fast food restaurants and being like, oh, they got 2 for $2 over here, and then they got 5 for $5 over here. Anyway, I love that. but so it's hard, right? Though you have to find some kind of pattern. And when I first moved to Durham, I was just trying to figure out where I was going to live and if I could find a job. I wasn't trying to figure out a yoga situation. So I stopped practicing for a couple of months. And during that time, a lot of really sad and chaotic things happened. Most notably that I talk about in the book, my aunt passed away really unexpectedly. And it's the kind of thing where I also realized that people, actually, let me not. The point is, it was a very confusing emotional experience for me. And also, just footnote, around that time, my grandma passed away, and then my girlfriend's brother passed away. It was just all this shitstorm was coming at us. And I was like, what was making me feel good before? Yoga? Okay, I just got to figure out a way to start doing this. And so I would just practice the poses from the Bikram sequence that I felt comfortable with, and I just practice them at my house. And it became this medicine that I give myself. Okay, so I'm just gonna do my yoga. I'm gonna do these poses that I know. And one thing about the Bikram sequence is that it's very limiting. So you only learn 26 asana in that class, and they're designed specifically for that practice. So there are many people who practice Bikram for years who only know a very limited number of asana. And this was around the time that Instagram was kind of coming out. It was before it is now, which is a whole separate, that's a whole other can of worms that if we get to that can, then we can go there, but I'm not gonna right now. But back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean like 5 years ago, it was...
In internet terms, that's like seven.
It was literally
7 times 5.
7 years ago. But we, there were very few yoga people on there. It was just like very serious practitioners and teachers giving one another feedback about alignment and then creating community. And I wanted to feel like I was a part of a community. I wanted to get feedback, and I started posting photos of my asana practice so that I could really just track my alignment, really. And when I look back at my social media, that's really what I see is a journal that I've successfully kept for the last few years. But I realized pretty quickly that the responses I was getting from people were not really like alignment tips or any kind of community thing. It was predominantly people being like, I didn't know fat people could do yoga. And I was just like, why do you think fat people can't do yoga? Fat people do all kinds of things. Like, I'm not even the first fat black person to put pictures of themselves practicing yoga on the internet. Like, clearly we have a visibility issue. And I've often felt, because I keep getting people being like, wow, you're changing things. Like, you're really, you're so different from how everyone else is. And I'm like, nah, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of fat black people who do this. And like, that there's a lot of different, all kinds of people, like not any kind of, there's no boundary to this. So I'm just like, oh, so this is just yet another thing where we think only white women do it. Got it. Okay, so let's just kind of make it clear that that's not what's happening. And I feel like that's all I've been doing. That was a really long explanation, but
that was a great introduction. No, that is a great introduction, and I'm excited that you have your story solid, because that means just less questions for me. So it is true that possibly the only thing skinnier and whiter than yoga is a skinny vanilla latte. That's the branding.
You said it, I didn't.
That is the branding. It's, we think of yoga, we think Gwyneth Paltrow. As you mentioned, it becomes really expensive. For me, I talk to people. My best friend looks like kind of the stereotypical yoga person, and she has an excuse. Her excuse is, I'm not flexible enough. So there's all these kind of barriers that we put before ourselves before we get there. Tell me, at which point did you realize that perhaps that was a problem? Or did that happen, did you realize that as you were already sharing your journey? I mean, did you have a conscious moment of deciding, I am going to take this flag and I'm going to run with it and show people that, yes, yoga is for everybody, as the title of your book says?
No. That has never happened to me. Really, and that's kind of the weird thing about all of this to me. That's what's so weird about all of y'all even being here, frankly, is that I'm not trying to do anything other than be black and die. Like, I'm not trying to do anything. I'm trying to, live my yoga and be a happy human being who's not an asshole to strangers, and show up for my partner, show up for my parents and my siblings. Like, I'm not trying to do anything other than that. And ultimately, so there was a point when I first started posting the photos when I was like, fuck, I can't believe there are so few people doing this. Okay, so I'll just, because otherwise I probably would have stopped doing it, because I don't care about, I don't care about having people know that I can practice certain yoga poses. That's not a thing. But I think it has been important for other people to see that. So that's, you keep doing it for that reason. But I had a point a couple years ago where I was going to delete all of it, because I was like, what is the point of this? Like, where are we going? Is the point to get Instagram likes? That can't be the point. Right. Because if that's the point, I've figured out the game. If you put a naked picture of yourself, people will look at the picture. It's not hard to comprehend that. And I think that there are a lot of people, and this is no shade, boy, it's gonna sound shady, but I think that there are a lot of people who are kind of caught up on that desire to be seen and to say, like, look what I can do, look how amazing this is, look how, and especially because I don't look like the average yoga practitioner, or the idea of the average yoga practitioner, that there's a tendency for it to be like, look at the amazing fat black girl, look what she can do, you know, so that I'm just like, I'm very bored by that narrative. I don't understand the purpose of it. I don't see who it helps. I don't, like, you post pictures and then what? To me, the real purpose of this is to show what a 21st century yoga practice really looks like. Because right now, what I'm seeing in the mainstream narrative of yoga is like, namaste, love and happiness, rainbows, coconut water, mats. Like, it's not about anything. It's just like, look at what
Yoga
pretty,
pants to brunch.
Yeah, it's like, look how happy can be portrayed. That's not what yoga is. Yoga is about the light and the dark. It's about the truth. It's about authenticity. It's about seeing within yourself. And that journey is fucking messy. It is dark. It's confusing. It's contradictory. And I feel like the only reason that I even continue to put my practice out there is so that people can see that a yoga practice means, that living your yoga practice means that you are coming to terms with the complexities of yourself, and that might be offensive to people. It might be confusing, it might be upsetting, and that's the point. And I don't ever have to step outside of myself. Like, people get so incensed by the things that I say or do, and I'm just like, why are you out here that concerned about a stranger? You know what I mean? And like, I feel like, for me, I'm just trying to live my practice. And if other people see that and they want to live their practice too, then that's dope. And the analogy that I use is, or I guess it's a metaphor. No, this is an analogy. Okay, it doesn't matter. So it is like, analogy, it's like I found an instrument inside of myself, and it's like covered in goop and blood, and so I pull it out and I'm like trying to clean it off, and I'm learning to play it. And then somebody sees me across the way and they're like, where'd you get that instrument from? And I'm like, I found this inside of myself. And then they're like, you found an instrument inside of you? And I'm like, yes. And then they're like, do I have an instrument inside of me? And I'm like, you have one right now inside of you. You can pull it out. And then they're like, really? And then they start pulling out their instrument and they're cleaning it off. And then they start playing something completely different than what I'm playing, but we're playing our instruments. And then somebody else hears it and then they start to look for their instruments, so that it's not everybody trying to find the same instrument that Jessamyn's playing. It's everyone trying to find their own instrument. And I'm not like going out to people like, have you heard the good news? Go find your instrument. It's like, if you are called to do this practice, then you will. But I mean, for me, I can't be that involved in whether or not the mainstream yoga perception has changed or whether people know about, I mean, I just can't, like, I got other stuff to do.
Too much responsibility there.
Yeah, I mean, I got a cat to take care of. Like, I have people that I don't have time.
But one of the things that you have talked about and that I found fascinating and I think very important, and I think that this impacts just about everybody, and I'm sure, most women. I, as a teenager, had an eating disorder, and I carry it with me throughout my entire life. And when I started doing Bikram, my first question is, how many calories am I burning? Am I just losing water weight? Is my metabolism getting faster? And then through that practice, through years of first Bikram and then yoga and then finally meditation and finally kind of balancing out my craziness just enough, I've understood.
It's that little bit.
Just enough.
Just that little bit.
I've understood, the true value in these practices. So you have a message that is the message of finding yourself and yoga and what it can do for you. But there's another message, and you're taking back the word fat. And that's a really powerful one. Tell me about how you're doing that.
Man, and that is something that honestly has so much to do with me and so little to do with anyone else that it's always bizarre to me that anyone has any opinions about it. Because the reality is that, so in the way that you hold, I love what you said about your being in recovery like that, about with with an eating disorder, because I really do feel like the shame and the self-hatred and the internalized hatred that comes along with being raised in a fat body is a recovery that I am permanently in. I do not feel as though I'm like, oh yeah, I started practicing yoga and now I understand my body and everything's just so great. No, like every day it is a struggle to start to literally spit in the face of what society wants for me to believe about myself and say, no, I am worthwhile. I do deserve to exist. I do deserve to take up space. And part of that for me is using the word fat. And I don't think it's clear that it's not an issue for everyone, but something that I've noticed, so when I first started posting on Instagram, that was around the time that I was really starting to reclaim that word for myself. So I just called myself a fat femme because I'm fat and I'm a queer femme. It's not like, people be like, what does fat femme mean? And I'm like, it's just what I am. Like, I don't understand what the question is. So to me, to say fat is just like, well, I'm large and that's just what it is. But I would get so many messages. I get far fewer now than I used to, but I used to get so many messages from people where they'd be like, I wish you wouldn't call yourself fat because it makes me feel bad about myself. Or, you're not fat, you're beautiful. Or, just all these different things. If you're fat-bodied, I know that you have heard these things that people will say if you use that word to describe yourself. Because when we say fat in this society, we don't mean fat. We mean ugly. We mean stupid. We mean unworthy of love. It's like unworthy to exist. When really, it just means large. So like what? Because you can be fat and. What? So I'm fat, that means I'm not beautiful? So I'm fat, that means I'm not healthy? So, and because we're also living in an age where people want to demonize because of obesity, which is so fucking wild to me, because my thing is like, because people be like, you're glorifying obesity, you're promoting obesity. I'm pretty sure I didn't say that. Like, I'm just saying I'm fat and I don't think I need to feel bad about it. Like, if you want to sit here and parse over medical facts, I'm just not gonna do that. Like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not gonna sit here and like, blah, you know about medicine, good for you. Like, what is there to say? So you believe that people who weigh a certain amount don't deserve to exist? Is that it? Because that's a conversation worth having. And to me, that is why I continue to use this word, to provoke those conversations within myself and with other people, because I think that it is outrageous to be afraid of words. And I understand how this happens. As a marginalized person, there's so many words that are used as weapons that I personally find to be very powerful weapons. And with this particular weapon, using the word fat is like taking the gun out of somebody's hands, taking the bullets out and putting it on the shelf behind me. Because I'm not gonna sit here and let somebody point a verbal gun at me because of fears that they have about themselves. That's what that's about.
That's so powerful. And speaking about taking back, have you ever had a moment where you take back the ownership of yoga from the branding that we experience in the world of yoga right now, at least in the United States? I mean, we talked about what yoga looks like when we think about the magazines, and you've been featured in some of these magazines that have portrayed these, idea of yoga to us. Have you ever had an experience where you're like, I'm sorry, give me back what yoga is, and perhaps I can, show you something different?
I don't know if this is a shortcoming of mine, and maybe I'm like not understanding activism in the right way, or I don't know. It doesn't matter. I just don't give a fuck, honestly. Like, I don't care. I feel like the mainstream yoga world is a fad that will be gone probably within the next decade, because everybody is, you move from thing to thing. It's just something that's popular right now. It's fun, I think, to obsess over leggings and mats and all of this. And it's just, and it has a picture that goes along with it that is a cishet white female with a certain amount of money. That's fun. I don't care about changing that. I don't care about interacting with that, because to me that is not yoga. I do not associate that with, that's a fitness trend that'll be gone. the spiritual path of yoga has existed for thousands of years and will continue regardless of whether or not I take anything back from anyone. And in my eyes, like, it's just important how I'm processing the practice for myself. That is all I can control. I'm not concerned about like how other people relate to it, especially because the mainstream yoga world is just gonna reflect whatever it takes to sell stuff, because ultimately this is all about marketing. And I think that the mainstream fitness industry is exactly like that. And I think that's why the mainstream yoga world is really a part of the fitness world and not a part of a spiritual life path. So I don't feel any emotional connection to that universe at all. And I understand that they see me, these marketers, and they are like, wow, okay, so people are looking at that. Maybe we should have more fat people? Okay, let's get this fat person over here, and then she can do it. And then I'm like, I know you don't give a about me. You have never given a about me. Like, you have never, I spent my entire childhood with y'all not showing anyone who looked like me, and I still got here. So, like, I'm not gonna, because, and this is a big question, I think, within the body pause community. It's this, like, you know, where are we going? How important is representation and visibility? And, you know, it's important for us to have our bodies out there and shown, but I'm like, what's the message that goes along with that? I feel like marketers see that, and then they're like, oh, so fat girls want clothing too? Okay, so we should get clothes for fat girls. Don't we have a half fat girl around here that we can get, you know, like just throw up? And she's tan, this is awesome. Let's just get her up there, and then now we fixed the problem, and now everything is inclusive. That has nothing to do with looking within yourself. That has nothing to do with the light. It has nothing to do with anything, really. So I just don't care, I guess is what that is. I just don't care.
And I think that's what you do care about and what you talked about, and finding the light within you is something that I personally, with mindfulness, have tried to find every day of my life. And sometimes it's, you know, in the middle of an argument or stress, and I remember I have to go meditate, and, you know, and I do preach a little bit. I do tell my boyfriend, go meditate, or my boss, you should meditate, and he takes it as a piece of advice, and he thanks me, and I'm like, that was an insult in my head. But you know, there are reasons that are very personal to me why I do it and why I recommend it to the people I love. Why yoga?
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities, and I can only speak for me personally. I'm not talking about how it is for anyone else. But I feel like I'm living in an age where society would really much prefer that I be a robot, and that if I wasn't born a robot, so maybe if they give me enough computers and screens to look at, that maybe I will turn into a robot. And I think that, especially because we're living in such a chaotic time, regardless of how you feel politically, we're living in an extremely, we are in the prequel to Parable of the Sower right now. Like, this is going down. And I feel like if you see that and see that, damn, they really just want us to not have our souls, then it's imperative to take care of that soul. It's imperative to look within yourself and to find that connection now, so that when the winds of change are really whipping, which is what's about to happen, that you can still pull into the light, to be mindful, to be present, and not just so that I can feel great about myself. No, this is so that I can protect my communities. It's so that I can help build resistance. It's so that I can help protect children, so that I can be of value, of service to those around me. Because there's no way to be of value, there's no way to be of service without taking care of yourself first. And I really feel like that's the reason to do this practice. Because, you know, we talk about self-care, and I think that it seems really selfish. It's like, oh, you want to take a bubble bath and take care of yourself and practice yoga and meditate. And, you know, it's like, no, I need to do this, because in the same way, if I don't brush my teeth, they're going to fall out of my face. If I don't take care of my soul, it's going to fall out of my body. So that's something that, for me, that's the heart of it. That's how I find my way onto the mat. Because if it wasn't that kind of connection, I really don't think I would still be doing this. I would have moved on to something else. I would just, you know.
And it sounds like putting the mask on yourself before you put it on the child in the airplane instructions.
Exactly.
I think about it that way. It's like, how can I build community, help other people, spread a message if I am in a place of chaos?
I am going to steal that, and I will try my best to remember that you're the one who said it, because that is so accurate.
It just came to me. I can't promise I didn't steal it from someone else, and it's been swimming back there somewhere. I think, are we good for our audience? Oh, great, I get 5 minutes more with you. Well, okay, so I opened your book, and I started reading it, and I loved your story, and I was like, this is awesome, and I love biographies. I'm obsessed with them, so I learned more and more about you, but then I got to a point where it's like, oh, wait, this is a practical guide. This is not just your story. There are poses, there are instructions, and there are combinations about how to do these poses. Can you tell me a little bit about the book and how people should use it?
Yeah, I mean, well, so the book came about because I had so many people reach out to me over the years. Like, I mean, I have a whole folder on Gmail that is just emails like, Jessamyn, how do I start practicing yoga? I see that you've done it. Like, how can I make this happen in my life? And I mean, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere that I can get this message. And if you are in this room and you have sent me a message like that, you know that I never responded to your message. And it's really awful because like my immediate response to the message has always been, how the could I possibly have time to answer this question right now? Man, I would literally have to write a book. I would have to tell you about how I started practicing yoga. I have to give you all the details about like things that I think that you should know, and we need to talk about appropriation, and we need to talk, there's so many different areas to touch on. How could I possibly sum that up in a Facebook message? Like, I don't understand. And then I would think, also, why didn't you just type that question into Google? Because there are literally thousands of resources about yoga, maybe millions at this point. Like, I don't understand why my insight is necessary on this. But then whenever I would go to look up, I'd be like, how do I start practicing yoga, Google? And it would be so confusing. I'd be like, is this a religion? Do you need special clothes? Is it for white people? Is it only for white people who want to be Indian? I don't understand what's going on here. And like that whole, I realized just how confusing all of this is. And I got so many people that would be like, what book would you recommend? And there's so many books that I would recommend, but I was like, somebody just needs to say, in the words that any 21st century dweller can understand, then in the most basic language, what is yoga? How can you start practicing today? How can it positively impact your life? And then also, there is something to the experience of each individual practitioner, because your journey as a practitioner of yoga and meditation is a very specific journey, but it could speak to someone and it's not because of where you are right now in your life, it's because of the truth and because of you facing up to those moments that we want to walk away from, that we want to ignore. Like in the book, I talk about my struggles with my weight. I talk about family problems, I talk about death, I talk about my problems with alcohol abuse, and all of those things. There's no way for me to say how I started practicing yoga without talking about all of that. And I just felt like I don't see people being honest about their practices. I see a lot of people that want to project this idea of the magical, mystical yoga teacher who just knows all the right answers and has the right tone, and that's just not what it is. It's wild to me that people think like, I'm not calm enough to practice yoga. I'm not flexible enough. Because I'm like, do you understand how fucked up and misfit, like literally everyone who is obsessed with yoga is? Everyone who is really devoted to this practice has come to it because of some kind of injury, some kind of trauma, something happened to you to make you need this. And that is true of every single person. And so I've often thought that the book is kind of like, it's a memoir with yoga as the red herring that keeps you moving through it. But it's really very much just a story of a fat black person who found their way to this practice, who is still struggling with issues, and that if you have any aspect of yourself, if you can see any aspect of yourself in that story, then you know that yoga is for you.
I will send questions to the audience, but I just have to say there is so much of your personal journey and you sharing that in that book that was really helpful for me to be able to understand and identify the importance of going deep, of sitting through pain, of, you know, how yoga or meditation teaches you to just be able to sit in that moment and know that whatever the emotion, whatever the pain, on the other side of that, you will come out and you will be able to stand. So I personally wanted to thank you because that's kind of observations that I've taken personally along my own journey. And then I read your book and it was like, you know, I'm sorry, but it's not Pema Chodron, you know? Like,
Yeah.
this is not a monk or, you know,
Exactly.
this is a normal person just like me. And I really connected with those moments of pain.
And that is literally why it's written like that, because there's just, I mean, I feel like if more people understood just how much darkness there is in a practice, and that, I mean, my personal practice at this point is predominantly like crying on my mat. And I feel like that truth is just not, it's not seen because we don't want to look at what's ugly, but what's ugly is also true, and that means that it is also love, and it is also this compassion that we're trying to manifest, and I just don't know how to be honest without being honest, whatever. Anyway.
Well, thank you.
Is it-
Is
talk to you
there
guys?
a microphone? Well, yes, I know you guys want to get up and give her a big applause, right?
No.
I kind of held that back.
You sit.
There is a microphone in the middle, so feel free to line up and ask away.
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, I love what you wrote in your book about farting on the book because I think that all the time. Okay. I'm here with one of my we're getting ready to graduate from our yoga teacher training program.
Congratulations.
In about 2 weeks. So how did you find your yoga voice? Because that's our thing. We're scared shitless of this journey, and you have your own unique voice, and we're always told to practice our yoga voice. So how did you find your yoga voice?
Oh man, this is such a good question, first of all. And I think it's a question that a lot of teachers have. And I've been asked by so many people, like, I just got out of teacher training, or I took a teacher training a year ago and I just haven't started teaching yet because I'm too nervous and I don't know, like, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm gonna be, is it something along those lines that you're kind of?
I had the opportunity, and I'm like you, so I don't know. It's just I don't want to go and start taking real. This is like breathe. I say always inhale through your mouth, and if you have to exhale through your then you exhale.
Yes,
But
yes, that's dope. That's dope.
Yeah.
I feel like, okay. When I did my teacher
but
training.
you can't do that in every audience, or I don't know. Do you find that you have to?
You can't do that in every
Well,
audience?
I could.
Oh, I mean, so this is a great question. I think it's kind of the crux of the issue. Like, I feel like there's a neutral tone that you should have, and then like, is there a time to really be myself? And I definitely, when I was in YTT, I absolutely was like, I mean, I'm surrounded by these amazing teachers who it seems as though they have really determined who they are because they are living their practices.
Yes.
They are looking within themselves and they are looking for that truth. And that is the only advice that I can give, is to live your own practice. Because before, like when I first got out of YTT, I was like, okay, so I need to make sure that I say these things. I need to make sure that like the
The
classes are sequenced in
alignment
this
and the
way.
anatomy and all that
exactly.
shit. And I'm like, I don't know. I just found out the difference between a ligament and a tendon. I'm like, what?
But these are all things that like you will learn more about as time goes on. And the most important thing is to just really be practicing on your own and paying attention to the things that you need as a practitioner. This is, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would disagree with this, but this is my philosophy.
No, our yoga instructor, she's like you. She's like, you'll get your voice when you,
Exactly. Like, because I feel like when you're really just practicing for yourself, and then whenever you go into a space with other people, you see that everyone else is just trying to have that exact same experience. And so you just communicate in the way that you would want for someone to communicate with you. And I think that that's different for every single human being. And I think that's why there's so many different kinds of yoga, and that's why every class is different, because everyone is just kind of, they're living their practices and reflecting that onto other people. And I was definitely very apprehensive in the beginning to really just kind of lean into being myself, because I'm not doing anything but being myself. And I find that my classes are the most tense for me when I'm trying to remember to say certain things and trying to remember that, make sure that this thing happens. Because why are you micromanaging other people's lives? You can't, because the reality is that regardless of how you sequence the class or the that you say, the experience that that person has is totally based on what's going on with them in that moment. And there's no way to control, like I can go in and like set an intention for the class and like have a full flow that is directed for very specific reasons, but there could be a person that never gets out of child's pose and they're just crying, and that is their practice.
Yes.
And that's why they're there, and they need to feel as though that experience was just as valid as the experience as anyone else. And I feel like that fostering that sense is kind of what I'm always just trying to do, and the only way that I know to do that is by being really honest and compassionate with myself and reflecting that onto other people, because then it makes space for people to have the experience that they need to have. Yeah, but that is so vague and so esoteric.
But
and
I understand
like,
exactly what you said, and that's okay. Thank you.
But I mean, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to sing. Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
Anyway, okay, cool. Bye.
Hello.
Hello.
I have one question. I get everything you've been saying, and I just love it. I love my yoga, but I'm a swimmer, so that's my light. And good for you for getting this at a young age. I hit mine in my 50s, and I swam from Alcatraz to San Francisco at 51.
Oh,
So I commend you for getting a grip on good life at a young age. Good for you. My question is, the friend that dragged you to yoga, is she still practicing? And have you said, thank you?
I have. Can I just say really briefly before I answer this question that I feel so very young in my life and in my practice, and I have such a respect for people who have weathered so many decades of storms and have dealt with so many things. And so I am really honestly living in your shadow, trying to understand life in this way. And I think that there's so many things that are coming for me that I'm probably totally unprepared for. And I don't want to feel like, oh yeah, I got to this place now and I've always figured it out. Like, I'm sure something's coming in the next 2 years to like really mess all of this up. So I don't want to make it seem like, oh yeah, I figured it out. Look at me. So anyway, that aside, the person who introduced me to this practice is now practicing transcendental meditation. She has walked down a different path than I've walked, and we are still very close friends. And she's someone that she lives in New York now, so I don't see her as often as I would like to, but she came to my signing when I was in the city, and I was just like, are you fucking for real? Like, is this, like, I never saw this at the time, and Anna Rooney, I am forever in your debt. Anyway.
Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, so I'm going to try not to totally fangirl right now.
I'm going to try not to fangirl over your shirt. Thank you. Yes. Mischief managed. Oh, Harry Potter stands unite. I'm sorry.
So it was just really life-changing for me to stumble upon someone who looked like me doing yoga on Instagram. And it was just happenstance. I was on Tess Holliday's page, and I saw your picture.
That is mine.
And that really motivated me because I always was interested in yoga, but heard black girls don't do yoga, fat girls don't do yoga, and I'm a fat black girl. So seeing that was really important for me. My question, though, for you is, when did you ever have like an aha moment where you were like, hey, I got this? Or was it something that happened gradually in your practice where you felt like this was something that you really had a grasp on, that you just were dedicated to doing?
You know, in the beginning, I kind of hoped that something like that would happen, that I would have a moment where it's like, yes, I got this. I'm always feeling good. But after a certain point, I just kind of realized that that attitude is really, it shortchanges you because it makes you set these boundaries for yourself. And like I was saying, I feel like the yoga, it's all about stepping beyond those boundaries. And to set yourself up so early is like, this is where my limit is. It's just, for me, it is a very small kind of mentality. So in my mind, I don't think I've ever gone, like, I don't feel like I've mastered anything. I don't feel like every time that I get on my mat, I feel like it's the first time. Like it literally could be the first time I practice Warrior 2 or Downward Facing Dog, because there's no pinnacle. It's just always moving along the journey, always, and being in it for the sake of the journey. And that process, and I don't want to say it like, yeah, it was really easy to get there, but that is kind of, I guess, the aha moment that I'm referring to. I don't know when that happened, but realizing that I don't need to be the best, I don't need to be number one, I don't need to reach a certain mountaintop, that really kind of switched it for me, because whenever that was, ever since then, I have been just moving along. You practice each asana is just an opportunity to learn a better way to breathe and be in connection with my body. So each time, so that each hold is just working toward that. It's just breathing. You don't even notice that you're actually becoming much stronger. And that maybe forearm plank after that plank pose is now like it's so much more attainable, and that maybe I want to chill in forearm plank pose for a while. And this is something, I feel like plank and forearm plank are really great examples for the fat body specifically, because when you have a fat belly, it's always like, I can't do core things. I don't do anything related to core muscles. That's not a thing for me. And being able to sit in those postures and just exist there and just let it be hard. And yes, this sucks. Okay, how long are you gonna think that it sucks? And just allowing the breath to just move through me and allowing the fire to build and just staying there, so that before you know it, now I'm in dolphin pose, because I've stayed in this forearm plank long enough, and now I need to walk my feet in. And then before you know it, you're working on forearm stand. Before you know it, you're working on headstand, handstand, all of these different arm balance transitions. But it's not because, I gotta make sure that I get to headstand by the end of 2017. No, it's just because I'm here for the journey. I'm here for whatever this is gonna mean. And I think that kind of switching gears from that mountaintop searching that's probably the aha moment that you're talking about. I hope that answered the question.
It absolutely did. Thank you.
Y'all are so nice.
Good evening. So I love the Instagram photos. That's why I'm here. I don't know anything about yoga. Yes. I've meditated before, but
yes.
What I saw in you is a sister that was unapologetic and took up space, and that means so much. That you're modeling for us what we need to do in our passions. So please continue to post the photos. Heck, I'll even post a photo.
Yes.
Yes. But my question is, I'm one of many community organizers in Sacramento that are addressing issues of community violence, both inter-community violence, but also police brutality, of which we've had 2 officer-involved fatal incidents just this week.
Really?
And so there's a lot of pain, especially in the communities that are hardest hit. So how can yoga be used as a tool for healing and liberation? How do we get it to those most impacted communities?
It is the tool, first of all, because this is how they steal our humanity, by making it seem as though this, and it's because of the frequency. It's because we don't all know about it. It's because it's happening simultaneously all over this country. That's how they seep it away. And I feel like yoga is such an amazing way to just pull everyone into the self, so that you can start to take care of the self, so that we can really stand strong in resistance. And I think that the best way to really bring that to more people is to just make it as accessible as possible. I'm talking about free in a park, show up if you can. We have mats, maybe we don't have mats, maybe it's just, and if you want to do some kind of payment structure, I love pay what you can structure where, and I used to teach these pay what you can classes, will be teaching again when I'm done with this tour, but used to teach these pay what you cans in Durham where people would pay me in bagels and strawberries. Like there was a couple that would bring this giant beach blanket and use it as their mat together. That to me is yoga, and it builds community too because it makes space for everyone to like, it's not about can you go to this studio and pay $20 and like make sure that you've got these correct tools, like that. You don't have to have anything other than your breath. And I think that anything that can be done to make that clear so that people can, because the people who really need this practice are the ones who are the most marginalized. It's people who are incarcerated, people who have had their humanity stolen from them. It's not about pretty pictures on the internet, you know, it's about survival. And so I feel like it is an amazing tool, I think, for community leaders, and I hope that you're able to find ways to make that happen. And I hope that answered your question also.
Thank you.
Dope. Thank you.
I was wondering, at my school, there's this website called Go Noodle, and I was wondering, and it has some yoga in it, and there's someone who looked like you on it, and I was wondering if it was you.
It probably was me. It's probably like internet. What school is this? You said?
OW Early One.
OW, okay. What kind of picture was it? It was just like.
It was a lady with hair like you.
A video?
Yes. A video? It could have been, well, you know we all look the same. No, I'm just kidding. But, no, JK, joke about race. We can do that. Anyway, no, it probably was me. I'm sorry that I'm so irreverent with that question. Yes. What? Hey.
One thing I was going to mention is I think this time in our lives with all the video and there's so much quick interaction with and instant technology that at this age, my daughter's in the 3rd grade, having that ability to get that mindfulness in would be really good and instill that in them now. And so there's
Absolutely.
These videos, and that's where she's like, I'm pretty sure she might have done a video on this Go Noodle that was teaching the kids at this age how to do yoga and how to do that mindfulness.
I see.
Yeah.
Then that probably was not me, it
Okay.
sounds like. But that being said,
Be a
that
cool thing
is
to do.
amazing because, first of all, when I was you're in 3rd grade? Yeah. So 3rd grade was like the worst year for me, first of all. I don't mean to make it seem like, I hope that I'm not going to cast a pallor over the year if it's been a great year. But I actually talk about that year specifically in my book because I was very uncomfortable with myself. I don't remember what page it is, but actually my 3rd grade yearbook picture is in the book. And I'm wearing like my Harry Potter glasses and I was just very, very uncomfortable with myself. And I feel like, good grief. If I'd had mindfulness techniques then, this would be a different song probably. Like I would be a very different person. We all maybe would never have met. And I think that anything that person was saying on Go Noodle, Yo Noodle is what it's called, whatever that is, sounds good to me. Probably. I don't know. Maybe send it to me first. I don't know actually what's
But
happening there.
I appreciate the positive body image and acceptance, and that's important right now, and especially at this age.
Yeah,
At all ages.
It's funny because, like, I remember when I was in elementary school and middle school, I thought it was pretty intense then, but I can't imagine living in this, like, Snapchat, Jenner, Kardashian universe where it's like everybody is just obsessed with looking different. Like, that is wild to me. I hope that you can know just how perfect you are right now, and that you will continue to be perfect forever. That there's never going to be a moment where you're not. You don't have to do anything different. And really, all of this is just us trying to remember that we are perfect. You know what I mean? It's just like just trying to remember that. So soak it in now. Good luck.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your year. And you also, looks like mom or sister or caregiver or aunt, I don't know, friend. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for
Thank you so much.
being here and for the book. And I've been following you on social media for a while. And I love what you said about crying on your mat. That's my practice a lot too.
Yeah.
And I love your disinterest in the yoga industry, which I feel similarly about, and I love your response to the woman's question about the woman who is a community organizer. I feel like part of my yoga practice is about a response to hating the horrific white supremacist capitalist patriarchy that we live in and building a different way of living with the people in my life. But of all the things I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned at the beginning of your talk about that you think pranayama is the most important part of the practice. And I have often struggled to understand like what to do with pranayama.
What is that about?
So I wondered if you would just talk about pranayama.
Yeah, totally, because I did not always feel this way. Like it was, I definitely came to it as like, asana is amazing, and we're talking about breathing. I guess that's kind of cool. I see how it's relevant, and then you start to, and then especially when you start focusing on ujjayi, and it's like, yeah, okay, I get this. I get this is all discussed in the book. If you need an explanatory comment, and you're wondering what we're talking about, but so I definitely did understand that, like, yes, the breath is how you are moving. This is that if you don't establish the breath, you can't really, there's no way to reach any kind of extension in any advanced asana without a deep connection to that breath. But the thing about breathing is that it's actually the most amazing thing that humans can do. And the fact that, so like we understand oxygen as being important. And everybody talks about like, you know, carbon and, you know, keeping the air clean and all this. Like we understand that as being important. But oxygen is really just our conscious minds needing to understand prana, because it's hard to explain something that you can't see. And so what really is happening is that as we all breathe, even just right now in this room, we're connected to one another. And that especially when we're breathing not in boxes with other air pushing into it, which is a whole other issue, but when we are outdoors, we're connecting with every other creature. That is a insane connection to be having. And that dialogue to me has become so much more interesting than any kind of physical movement, so that you can be doing that work and just sitting, and that is the yoga. That is what you need. And I feel like even taking that one step further, that when you're breathing, that it's not even really the inhale or the exhale that makes such a difference. It's that magic in between. It's that constriction where there's nothing happening and you're sitting in this abyss of darkness. And that I know sounds so vague, and I can't believe how flaky I sound now, because like I really used to be like super jaded and was just like, what? You're talking about prana, what's happening? But like truly that space at the end of the exhale before the inhale is so, that's what you're looking for the whole time, is that vastness, to be able to sit in the truth. And that, to me, is just way more interesting than any kind of physical exercise could ever be. And I feel like that's why I'm like, pranayama's amazing, and that's why we should focus on it, and that there's so many different ways to do it. And I find myself, I am a complete novice at this, and I know that there is at least one other person in here who's like, I've been working on this for decades, and they're deep into it and probably aren't really, you know what, let me stop. Anyway, the point is, even as a novice pranayama practitioner, which is what I would call myself, I feel like it's something that it is magical in a way that I don't know how to put words to. And usually we only respect things in the society that you can describe. And I think that, you know, I just can't, I can't describe it, but it is amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi. How are you? I just first want to say that I completely relate to you. At the beginning of your talk, you were talking about grief and depression and kind of losing yourself once you had those deaths in your family. And I'm currently kind of going through that. It's been 5 years, but I'm still going through it. Yeah. And I just want to know how yoga helped change, as you were going through the journey of finding yourself, how that changed your relationships with people, especially like your significant other in your family, and how they reacted to it and how you felt about it.
And I think that's a common fear. I just want to add, I think it sounds like that's a really common fear that people have with yoga, with meditation. Will it change me in the way I do?
And it does. It does. a lot. And so none of my best friends practice yoga. My best friend does, but she started practicing before we knew each other. I didn't like convince her to practice yoga or anything like that. When I first started practicing at home, I was living with my now, if you're queer, you know how complicated these relationships can be. Look, she is somebody that we're not in a romantic relationship anymore, but like we still are domestic life partners. But at the time, we were in a romantic relationship. And I wanted her to take my yoga pictures, and she flat out refused from the very beginning. And so that is how and I've never like tried to get her to practice or really push that, because I don't see that as being a worthwhile use of my energy, and I also don't want to make her never practice because I pushed it. But as a result, and this is the person who's like closest to me, as a result, our relationship has changed since we first knew each other. And I have been involved, I'm also polyamorous. I've been involved with a number of people since I started practicing, relationships that have been both long and short. And all of those have been affected by this, because it really does completely alter the way you see the universe. And I feel like I didn't notice it that much until after my teacher training. And I remember during YTT, my teacher was like, Kimberly Puryear, if you were ever in Asheville, North Carolina, she's an amazing human being. But I remember Kim saying that, there are probably people in your life right now that will not be in your life after you are really living this practice on a day-to-day basis. And I was scared of that, because there are people that I love very, very much, but who I don't want to say like, well, because they're negative and they have, they're not looking at life the same way that I am. Because we are in different stages in our lives, we are not as close as we once were. And this has ended romantic relationships that I'm in. And it most notably ended a relationship that I was in for a long time, and that I'm still very much kind of in the trying to understand. And I think that for me, it's just helpful. It's just yet another reminder that nothing in this life is permanent, and that's what you get for thinking that everything is forever, and that things are constantly changing, and people are constantly moving in and out of your life, whether that's by choice or whether it's by death, there's so many different reasons. And I have a lot of difficulty coping with change. I have a tendency, to think that like, I know how things are, and I can set the universe up. I am master of this universe, but I am master of shit. I'm just here, and it's just happening. And accepting that is probably the most important lesson out of all of this. But I definitely, the answer is a lot has changed, and I think all for the better, though.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, so I did YTT in 2010 and I started teaching, and I work in a place with a lot of white people, and my yoga studio. In my yoga studio where I was trained was feels like what you're talking about, the mainstream yoga, where Lululemon and all that. And I grew up socioeconomically, I have like one pair of yoga pants. And I was wondering how you continue to feel like you have a voice to teach other people when you feel, like, who am I to teach you?
I feel like that is the reason to do it, because of that. Because it's like, and also because I don't ever feel like I am trying to show like, look what yoga is. Look how much I've learned. Let me show you everything that I've learned. I'm just like, I'm here. And we're going to do this flow. And if you're down to do it, then we're going to do it together. This is something that I think this is the way that I interpret this practice. If it works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I never feel like I have literally never felt like I am anywhere above the person who has walked into the yoga studio for the first time and has never done this practice before. Like, I don't feel like there's any I feel like we're all just kind of on the playground together, and we're just like, I'm like, yo, you guys, let's do this thing, and then we're all doing this thing together. It's not this kind of holier than thou thing, you know? Because I feel like if I was trying to fit into that space, then I would sit in a space of discomfort all the time and be like, I don't know where my voice is to teach. I don't know how I have the right to teach people, because I don't know anything. All I know is what has happened behind me, and know that I'm looking forward, and that's it. And I feel like kind of sitting in that truth has been really, really helpful for me, because otherwise I do think that I would be feeling the things that you're describing. Like, how do I...
Like if you have nothing to say.
Yeah,
sometimes. I don't know do you ever feel like sometimes you don't have
I have never felt that before. And I think that it's... No, just because, like, literally every time that I start a class, I just say whatever I think, whatever I feel needs to be said. And I hate how vague that sounds, but like, it's just true. I'm not like, I want to make sure that people understand this thing today. I want to make sure that, because then that's my ego getting in the way. That's me needing to show off all the stuff that I know. And yeah, I know stuff. I've been practicing yoga, so I know things, but I don't know that much. And I certainly don't know enough to have my head up my ass or anything like that. So I feel like kind of, whatever, I'm repeating myself. Standing in the truth of my absence of knowledge is the key to not feeling those things. Does that make sense?
I guess I just feel like sometimes you worry that you're saying the wrong things.
I think that sometimes you might be saying the wrong things. And I think that that's okay, honestly. Because I don't see how we can all control. I'm sure that there are people who go to my classes who walk out of it not having had the best experience of their life. And that's fine, because I'm not for everybody. And I'm not gonna always, like, we're not always gonna jive. It's not always gonna make sense. And in that case, please go forth and find the teacher that does work for you, because there is someone who does. And I think that ultimately that's why there have to be so many yoga teachers, and why ultimately all of us should be teachers, because every experience is valid. And I think that that holier than thou thing is the tricky spot. But yeah, sometimes you do say the wrong thing, and it's fine.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in real quick because I'm in a room full of women, and this is a message that I've tried to communicate to so many women before. I've interviewed many women. I had a series called Co-Inspire, which is kind of ongoing, where I interview founders of companies and venture capitalists and startups and all that stuff. And a small percentage, as you can imagine, are women. And during the interview, this has happened every single time, without exception. The men they talk. They say whatever comes to mind. They just talk. Whatever. Sometimes I know it's bull. Sometimes I'm like, you're full of shit because I read your bio and that it was done differently, but I'm not gonna jump in. The women, every 5 phrases, it's like, can I say that again? You're gonna edit this, right? Okay, can I say that again? And we rethink ourselves, and we strive to be perfect. And that is one of the main reasons why women are not represented in leadership positions, and why is the same with girls. That's why we do so well in college and in graduate school, but then we don't become leaders and we're not CEOs, is because men will raise their hand 100% of the time when they don't feel prepared for a job, when they feel that they're 60% prepared for a job. Women will raise their hand only when we feel 100% prepared for a job. So in terms of striving to be perfect or saying the right thing or being perfect, what I try to do in my stories is when I say but, or I say the wrong thing or I ask the wrong question, I put it in there on purpose. And I love that. I think part of your message is that it's whatever idea we have of perfection, that.
Exactly. No, yeah, it's just like because that is the perfection. Exactly.
That is the perfection.
I completely agree.
I just had to get that out there.
No, I could not agree more.
First I want to just say, wow. I mean, I put this on, we have a African American Women's Health Legacy website, a meetup, and I just put it on there and said, maybe somebody might like this. And I got about 7 people said they were coming. And I said, wow, I don't know anything about yoga. And, but in the last 2 months, I became a director of a family life center in Oak Park. And I wanted to talk, it's connected to a church. So I said, well, what about yoga, And they said, well, no, that's some deaf, that's like, no, we shouldn't do that. And I was like,
no.
And I was thinking, but if you're healing, which you said, and if you're looking for going through changes, it just seems like yoga could be something that could be no. So I want you to help me with that because I just started doing water aerobics and I'm high. So I made the mistake of saying it's almost as good as an orgasm.
Yes.
But being the good Christian girl that I am, I cleaned it up real quick. I just said, well, I don't know what it was, but it was really, I don't know. It was just really, I don't know what to say. Okay, so maybe it wasn't quite like an orgasm, but it seemed like it when I got out of the pool.
Probably a lot like an orgasm.
So yeah. So I really want to say thank you both because I spend most of my time biting my lip and trying not to say what I want to say. But what I really wanted to say is I'm glad I stepped out of my box and put you on the meetup because I can see a few women here that came because of the invite. And everything you're saying, ditto to that. I just loved it. And I just really wanted to say that. And, but I really want to figure out how to bring this into, Christian women's lives, but, the judgment of, well, I don't know if we do that,
There's so much fear whenever we start talking about spirituality because it's so deeply linked with religion. And I feel like especially when there are cultural contexts that are worked into that, like just speaking from personal experience, like communicating this idea to whatever. Let me not actually. The point is, I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
And I think that it's all about kind of isolating this idea of the spirit, and that I understand that everyone has their opinions about what happens when we are no longer here or what is going on. Everyone has their view that's shaped by where they're standing on this planet. But the reality is that we all have something that connects us to something larger. And that is what we're taking care of. It's not in conflict with anything. You can be any religion and understand this. Like it has nothing to do with it. And in many contexts, you can even understand your faith in a deeper way, to really be looking within yourself and maybe exploring the text in a different way and really just starting to dig. Because I've had a long journey with religion in my own life and am now coming to a different side of it where I find where it has kind of absorbed a space in my life where I was hesitant before. And I'm very understanding of this confusion that comes along with it. And I think that whenever you can just try to tap into, and maybe that starts with just talking about the asana more and not talking about the spiritual aspects as much, because it always gets me whenever people are like, yeah, I want yoga, but without the spiritual stuff. Because I'm like, what yoga are you talking about that doesn't have spirituality along with it? Because once you start with the asana, then you see that there is a this breath with motion thing, this is deep. And this is something else. And it's just allowing like that tiny baby toe to be stuck in. Not like you don't have to go full Monty. We don't have to do everything, but just giving the opportunity to just take that tiny baby step, I think is good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
First of all, I'm crushing so hard on both of you. Like for real. But my husband's here. So we're good. We're good, everybody's good. So thank you. How did I not know about you here in Sacramento? I'm so grateful. Thank you for the work that you do is amazing. And of course you, seriously, my daughter, who's 14, we have 2 daughters, my husband and I. So my oldest daughter used her allowance money to purchase your book today.
No.
What?
Oh, yes. I am so touched by that.
I know. And she held it like this while you were talking. So I just wanted to say I'm grateful for the impact and how powerful yoga, I consider it to be a spiritual, but also a powerful healing modality.
Yes.
And how it is transgenerational. I mean, obviously it's been here for years, but mostly I just wanted to come up here and say thank you.
You know what? Thank you for that. Like, you've given me so much. I don't even know how to process any of that. But can I also just say really quickly before, I know that you were going to say something else.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is your daughter, like, sitting right over here, actually.
The one
because
who's
it seems
embarrassed
like,
now?
Yeah, because like, she was looking at her face like, I know she did not just call me out. And I was like, that is me and my mom so much. And y'all just don't even know the connection that's happening right now. Anyway, I just had to say that.
Yeah.
Not to cause even more.
More embarrassment. I'll hear about it on the way home. But I just want to say thank you so much for both of you for just spraying the love, this love energy. I think about how many of us came here. I know we rushed from, an hour and 15-minute drive to get here. And so I'm just very grateful to be in the presence of all these people because yoga really is love and it's beauty. So thank you.
Thank you so much for taking out of your day and time. And this not even just for you guys, but like for all of y'all. I know it is no small thing to come out on a school night, on a work night, and be like, I'm gonna listen to somebody talk about yoga, and they're gonna have a conversation. Like, I know it's no small thing, so thank you, truly, truly.
Hi,
Hello.
nice to meet you. I just did my first TT training last year, and like you, I feel like it's changed me. I mean, just even sometimes I'm like, why am I crying? Why are my emotions just? But I love it.
Absolutely.
So, having said that, it's changed me so much that I'm thinking about going to India, maybe by the end of this year. Curious to know if you've been there. Where would you recommend going? I'm thinking Rishikesh.
I have not been to India, though I've heard many, many stories from people visiting all parts of the country. And it seems like as long as you find the space that is meant for you, then you will find your way. But when I think about deepening my own practice, I think about just trying to look more within myself as opposed to changing my physical location.
Right.
And so in the way that you're thinking of going to India, I'm thinking of going on silent meditation after this because I've been constantly talking. And I feel like there's so much to process and I just need to look within myself. And so that's kind of the space that I'm at. But I think that we have this kind of obsession in America with I got to get to India because I need to know about that and I need to steep myself in that. And I feel like I've noticed a lot of people come back with more than just a good experience. I feel like I've seen a lot of people come back with heaping handfuls of cultural appropriation and of entitlement and privilege, and that there comes this sense of I don't know. I don't want to talk about something that I don't know about. But I just I'm so looking forward to, I hope that we stay in contact. I'm so looking forward to hearing about how that experience is. And I'm sure that you are going to have an amazing experience.
Well, my sister, I mentioned it to her, and she's my travel buddy, and taught yoga in the Canary Islands with her in February for the first time. And so we're very close, and so she said she wanted to go with me. And so I thought, that could be a good opportunity for me to go somewhere that's so different. And I've heard people say, even my teacher said, maybe Rishikesh would be a good first place because it's a lot to take in. Yeah. For me, the spiritual part of it and the meditation part of it and the mindfulness part of it, really interesting to me and always has been, just as much as the movement. And I agree with you. You can't separate the two. They go together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that, I completely agree. I think that geography is less involved in those things than we tend to think in America.
Okay.
But that being said, have a dope time, let me know how Rishikesh is.
I'll send you
I was
pictures.
thinking Bangalore, so like really, I mean, like I don't know, like, I'm not gonna wax poetic about something that I don't know about, but I do think that you're probably gonna have a completely amazing and life-changing experience.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.